How did I meet my stalker ex-boyfriend that is still stalking me 20 years later? I was in a bar on the East Coast of the US, not East Coast of the UK. And he was a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. There was just a big group of us. And he actually turned up with his girlfriend at the time and a bunch of friends that I sort of knew. And so that's where we first met. Probably said about 3 sentences to him. He seemed really normal. When I graduated from university, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna meet this guy back in the US. I had family in the town where he lived, so it just kind of made sense. And then we started to see the early signs. So we've been together a few months now. During this time, there were a lot of early signs, aka red flags, that this wasn't going to be a great relationship. And over the years, I've kind of categorized them into 3 main behaviors. Number 1, very early on, he started to be quite aggressive. Now, initially, he wasn't aggressive to me, but he was aggressive to other people around us. So one time, we took a trip to Atlantic City. I'd gone to visit him on the East Coast, and we were with a bunch of his friends. And I remember him drinking quite a bit, but I mean, most people were in the group. And he started to get really rowdy as the night went on, get aggressive with like people next to us. He said something odd like, "Are you looking at my girlfriend?" I was like, this is weird because I don't think they were. He was still being very lovely with me, and at that point he was still being very lovely with my family. That did get progressively worse over time, spoiler alert. That was another behavior initially that I was like, should have caught that one, Laura. And then the third behavior, which I didn't initially notice because it wasn't there, which started around the 6-month period and progressed and got worse up until our breakup, kind of degrading behavior towards me and my family. During this time, I actually ended up getting a job as a flight attendant and I moved to the Middle East and we did a long distance relationship. The move to the Middle East? Blessing in disguise. During this time when I was in the Middle East and he was on the East Coast of the US, true colours started to be shown here. I remember one time it was Christmas Eve and a bunch of me and my friends weren't flying anywhere for Christmas, so we all decided we'd get like dolled up and go out for like a nice meal. And I was Skyping him just before we left. He'd obviously been drinking again. He was just putting me down about how I looked. I looked trashy, and then he eventually transpired to saying that I looked like a lady of the night. Didn't use those words, obviously. And I just put the Skype down. I was like, I'm done with this. He completely lost his quite degrading about me to my family. And the cherry on top of this very toxic cake was that he called my father when I was in the Middle East, just in the process of quitting being a flight attendant because I didn't align with the airline anymore. And he called my father, told my father that not only was I not a flight attendant, I was working in the Middle East as a lady of the night and I was pregnant. This is it. We're done now. We're done here. I quit my job. I got back to the UK. I called him and I was like, we're not doing this anymore. You can't speak to me this way. You can't harass my family in this way. At the time, he took the breakup really, really well. Ended up moving to the US anyway because that was my plan. My family had put certain things in place. My plan was to move in with my grandparents and I wanted to try and get a job in TV production in New York City. So we moved to the 1 square mile town where he happened to live. And I kid you not, within 24 hours of me being there, he finds me at the bank. And he's like, hey, oh my God, you're here. Let's have a hug. Like I said, I was living with my grandparents. And I remember coming home one time and my grandmother was talking about this person, how nice this boy was. And he was really nice and he sat with them. And it's a small town, so everybody kind of knew each other. Nobody locked their front doors, etc. And so people would come and go to see my grandparents very often. She was saying, you know, talking to my grandfather, he's such a nice boy, when he came and saw us earlier today. And I looked at her. I was like, who are you talking about, Grandma? She said, oh, this really nice boy came to see us today. Uh-huh. What was his name? And she told me his name. And it was the ex. Oh. Started to get multiple emails a day, quite literally talking absolute drivel, saying that he was never going to be with anybody else, which is poppycock because I know that he actually did cheat on me while we were together, not the point. And then I remember his mum emailed me and asked me to go for a family birthday dinner and I was like, no, we've broken up, why would I go? It was a very uncomfortable time. Marry that with the fact that I had some family stuff going on back in the UK, I just decided to leave. So I'm back in the UK. From then, 15 years ago, to present day, I still get frequent emails. I got 2 last night. Probably thinking 2 things. Number 1, Laura asked him to stop. I have multiple times. And he has responded with, I'm going to do what I want to do, don't tell me what to do. I've also informed authorities both in the UK and here in the US. I never actually got a response from authorities. People just generally see him as a bit of a nuisance. And I know the other thing you're probably thinking is, Laura, just block the email addresses. I initially started blocking the email addresses, and then when it continued for a number of years, I think I need to keep these emails. If something very serious were ever to happen, I might need these emails.